That's great. Sweet. Well, thank everyone for joining us tonight. Yeah, as people join, I'll throw some stuff in the chat for those that are jumping on here just a minute late. Tonight we have a phenomenal speaker joining us tonight, who I'm very excited to introduce. First, I'll introduce our host, David Hornbrook. We've been doing these webinars, podcasts for just over a year. This is number 13, and it has been an absolute blast. Every week we get more and more people that are registering, and we consistently have hundreds of people join us every third Thursday of the month. So if this is your first time joining us, look for invitations every third Thursday. We've got the same thing going every single month, and we plan to keep going. In fact, this next month, we have an awesome individual who we'll talk about at the end. Right, David, or you want to introduce him here at the beginning?
Well, Peter Peasy, which Peter Peasy will be really enjoyable. Totally different than what we're going to hear about tonight. He's a ceramist out of Staten Island, a master ceramist. So it's going to be kind of an interesting twist, and certainly something that's going to add to what we're going to talk about tonight. So we'll talk about that at the end, and we'll give you the dates for that.
Sweet. Now, first, let me say this about David. David is a world-renowned cosmetic dentist. People fly from all over the world to come and see this guy and have work done by him. And he's humble, so he's not going to tell you this stuff. But I'm telling you, he's one of the absolute best. If you just go jump on his website and start looking at some of his cases, he does phenomenal work. And I've joked now 2 or 3 times that I want to go get this crown right here fixed up by him. I'm not a huge fan of it. I just got to find him when he's in San Diego and not in Mexico one of these times. And then one of the great things about working with Dr. Hornbrook is that he has, over his years, created a phenomenal network of the best dentists and the best specialists that are out there. And so this has been an amazing experience to, David, get introduced to your network. Dr. Nunez, we're super excited to have you on tonight and to learn more about bonding and optimizing our protocols in that space, and to really dive into some of the nitty-gritty things that you have to share. So David, I'll let you share a little more about what we're going to talk tonight, but we are very excited about tonight's presentation. So thanks everyone for joining.
Oh, great. Well, great. Because you were giving me all those accolades, I'm looking around to see who the hell you're talking about, but I appreciate that. First, I'd like to apologize for all those that were excited about last Thursday. I was excited as well, and unfortunately, our guest got caught in one of those air traffic control problems where literally flight was delayed, could not get to a site where he could sit down for 2 hours. So we appreciate those that are back and said, I'll just wait another week and you won't be disappointed. Tonight's program, as always, is sponsored by Dental Intelligence, Dental Intel, for those that are familiar with it or have used it. If you haven't, I would look into it. I think most of you already know that I changed my dental software from PracticeWorks of 35 years just so that I could use Dentrix, so that I could use Dental Intel. And that was a huge jump for my practice and I, but it was absolutely worth it. And I would urge you to at least look at it. Second is Utah Valley Dental Labs, are the other sponsor. Again, most of you know I'm the clinical director of education with them. They do all my lab work. They're full service dental lab. Some beautiful lab work, and we certainly appreciate them being a sponsor. So first thing I'd like to do, if you have any question at all, this is live. So if you have any questions at all, because I want to make sure that Dr. Nunez doesn't get ahead of you and think, I forgot to ask this, or I'm confused here. I want you to go into the chat section. Don't go to Q&A. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. If I feel it's apropos with your question and I can interrupt Rolando at a timely manner, I will. If I don't ask him your question, it probably wasn't a very good question, or no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. At the end, we'll have about a 10-minute question and answer, but feel free to write your questions in the chat. And we're going to move forward. Rolando and I have known each other maybe 3 or 4 years. He's got a great background. I want him to share with you. As I've always tried to get the best at what people do in our industry, and I don't think you're going to find anyone better than Rolando in the category of adhesive dentistry. And, I would have said it's a hot topic 15 years ago. I think it's even a hotter topic now because of the new ceramic materials we have and the things that we're doing. So without further ado, I appreciate you coming. I know that you're teaching a course down in South Carolina, so you're not home. Home is Chicago for you. And I told him he's got the Hugh Hefner suite with that gold velvet headboard.
Right there.
But I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know it's going to be late tonight after a long day. And thank you so much for joining us.
Now, it's funny. I just heard Steve give you some accolades, and I want to take, I want to do it in my very own way. I graduated from dental school in 1996. And I went to a Chicago Midwinter. That was my first big show, big dental trade show as an attendee. And I got a chance to listen to Dr. David Hornbrook at the Chicago Midwinter meeting. And it was mind-blowing, 100%. And one of the things that I asked myself was, how do I get to be like this guy? Like, what do I need to do? Like, from a personal point of view, and what was even more mind-blowing, it was not only the information, the amount of knowledge, but the way he was able to control the crowd. It was a big crowd. We were about 600 people in that presentation. And he was talking about ceramics, and he was talking about veneers, something that I never seen in dental school. He was talking about cosmetic dentistry, which to me was like a total need, like I never heard of that. And so it's funny that he says, I've known you for 4 years. Well, I've known Dr. Hornbrook for 20 odd years. I have known about Dr. Hornbrook for 20 odd years. I have read everything that he's have ever written. And I have gone to many of his lectures, unbeknownst to him. I have been his student, and I have been a fan. I just wanted you to know that, because it's interesting to me that you say, oh, I've known Rolando and he's so good and whatever. No, it doesn't compare.
Well, thanks for that.
It doesn't. So a little bit about my background. I'm a dentist, and I have a background in biomaterial science from University of Alabama. I am from Venezuela, so that will make me the first, or maybe the only, Venezuelan redneck in the face of the planet, which is 100% okay, because I enjoyed my time in Alabama, and I do like moonshine, and I do like moon pie, and I enjoyed my time. I got a very good training from over there, and then I got hired by Bisco right out of that program. They gave me the opportunity to work in the lab, and I've been doing research since the year, probably, I want to say 99 up to now, on bonding. That's been my primary focus. And I've been involved in product development, and also learning about regulatory aspects, international product development, which is totally different when you do product development for the domestic market. And right now I am the manager of clinical research. I'm in charge of that for Bisco Incorporated. So I live in Chicago. I did practice dentistry for 20 odd years. Nobody told me. I know all the nitty gritty. I know all the, going through the grind. But the owner of Bisco told me, I'm going to retire, so I want you to come and, help me. And he lied, because he hasn't retired yet. So
good luck with that.
Yeah, no, he told me about a week ago, I'm going to collapse in the lab. And that's when it started. That's what he told me, the owner, Dr. Bianca. So I'm going to talk today about bonding, not only to cement, I don't want to talk only about cementation protocols, but also I like to include bonding to the tooth structure. Now, as I go through my presentation, feel free to ask anything. Dr. Hornbrook will be monitoring that. And that if you have any questions, just throw them out there. If I can answer, I will definitely do that. Make sure, there is no stupid question. The stupidest question is the one that is not asked. And believe me, I've done this for many years. The questions that you have, somebody else has them. It's not you. It's never you. Everybody has the same question. Everybody. So, Dr. Hornbrook, I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. So, I have experienced a lot of issues with Zoom in the past when it comes down to sharing screen. And I don't know if this has to do with the fact that I use a Mac, but I'm going to go through the slides one by one. And that is the easiest and less hectic way, because sometimes I play my slides and I'm talking and I go through the slides and it doesn't change on everyone else's screen. So I'm just going to go through them. So this is a presentation I did for a group called the Dental Influencers Alliance. This is a group that is basically an Instagram dental community. It's very big, it's growing, and they asked me to do a presentation, and I called it Bonding and Beer. Nowadays, they invite me to do this presentation, Bonding and Beer, where I talk about the bonding procedures and so on. And I also talk about beer, which is my favorite drink. Beer is communal, it's cheap, you can share it. There is no reason to drink bad beer. Nowadays we have a lot of craft beer, and I know it's kind of like sounds very snob, but it's just fantastic. Craft beer is a wonderful thing. So a little bit about myself. I am a member of the IADR. Everyone is a member of something. Human beings like to be in a group. This is the group that I cherish the most. I've been a member for the IADR for the past 20 odd years. I have presented my research at every meeting every year. I have been a moderator for certain areas regarding bonding in different sessions. I have been, selected by the IADR to moderate. And this is kind of like I don't want to say a recognition, but it is something that the IADR will do based upon your background and your trajectory. So I'm also a member of, because I'm from Venezuela, and I do try to work with the Hispanic community a lot, the Latin American community. I'm a member of the Latin American Operative Dentistry and Biomaterials Society. I was, not anymore, but I was an editor for the Journal of Prosthodontics regarding basic biomaterial testing. And right now I am the manager of clinical research at Biscoing. So that is my background. Not that it really matters. I don't believe in CVs or any of that kind of thing, but I do put the slide so you can have a feel of who you're going to listen to. So research is my thing. I haven't touched the patient since the year 2012, which is the year that I moved to Chicago. I don't practice in the US. All I do here in the US is work on research. And in the past, when it came to bonding, there weren't many substrates that you can bond to. You had, of course, the tooth structure, and you had metal, which is very straightforward. And there were some crazy people that were doing metal-free restorations. And the guys that were doing metal-free restorations were people that had good labs that could do really good ceramic work. But nowadays, and I want to say this, with Emax coming out, which is a very a material that is very forgiving. It's very easy to make restorations out of Emax, whether it's CAD/CAM or pressed. And then, of course, with the CAD/CAM technology, now you have a vast array of different surfaces that you can use as a restorative material, but you also need to know how to bond to them. So to me, every time or every month, every moment that you have a material that comes out to the market, that means I have job security, because I have to test it. I have to figure out the best way to bond it and optimize it. Now, here's the deal. When I talk about optimizing bonding, what I'm going to show you is what works in the lab to get the highest bond strength. It doesn't mean that it's the only way you can do things. You can do a lot of things in many different ways. However, I try a lot of different permutations that I'm able to gather from clinicians that ask questions, or from lectures that I give, and then I hear other people. I try those permutations in the lab. And what I'm going to share with you guys is the permutation or the protocol that optimizes the bond regarding bond strength. What is it that you need to do to obtain the highest bond strength from a lab perspective? There is always a question about, does the higher bond strength means the best clinical performance? It's very difficult to actually correlate high bond strength to clinical performance, because there is something, a variable that is there that you cannot actually measure, which is the clinician. You know, treatment planning, occlusion. We don't do any of that in the lab. We don't. What we do in the lab is just test how you bond to a surface. And unfortunately, other things are not being considered. So you may apply the protocol that I will share with you to a specific surface or substrate, but if you don't take into consideration other things that are probably more important than a bonding protocol, things are not going to work. So I just want to make that clear, because it is very important that you guys understand that treatment planning, you know, proper diagnosis and occlusion is key to any restorative procedure, especially when you're talking about indirects. It's very, very important. Bonding is second. Okay, bonding is second, but my job is to share bonding protocols. So let's start with that. All right, so bonding is my passion. I do spend a lot of time during the day learning how to bond. And I'm still learning. I've been doing this for over 20 years and I'm still learning. And of course, at the beginning, it was all about dentin. Okay, how to bond to dentin, how to properly bond to dentin. And dentin it's a very funky substrate, because not every dentin is the same. You have so many different types of dentin. The enamel is pretty straightforward, not a problem. Enamel bonding is fairly easy. Bono Quarter taught us how to do that from the 60s, and it hasn't changed. It has not. But bonding to dentin is a different story. Dentin has more organic component, it's got collagen, and then you have different types of dentin. You have, you know, the more superficial dentin, and then you have deep dentin, sclerotic dentin, you have secondary dentin, you have axial dentin, you have root canal dentin, and everything is totally different. So I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to properly bond to dentin. And I think I kind of got it. However, with all these new substrates, bonding has moved away from dentin, which is kind of figured out already. And we're looking at all these different substrates. You got zirconia, for example. And then zirconia, you have 3Y, 4Y, super translucent, or 5Y. And then you have these hybrid ceramics like enamic. You have these super polymerized composite. And then, of course, you have your Emax or lithium disilicate. And then you have now Emax, the patent on lithium disilicate has expired. So now you have other companies coming out with their version of lithium silicates. And everything out there, every time something comes out, we get it in the lab and we test it. There aren't a lot of differences between these substrates every time something new comes out, but we need to test it. We have to test it. It's our responsibility. Okay, so we get to do that, and it's a lot of fun, because you know, now people are calling to Bisco and they're saying, hey, I'm gonna do a, you know, an enamic crown. How do I bond to it? Now they're giving names to the substrate with a brand. So we need to have that information. We need to gather the information. We need to test it so we can share it with people that are using these substrates. Okay, so you need to do that. So every time I talk about bonding, there's always somebody that, you know, they get up and say, well, you're not doing, I don't need to do what you're saying. You know, you're wrong or whatever. and I always say that you got two type of people. You got the critics and you got the innovators. I am not an innovator, but definitely not a critic. I don't criticize anybody because of what they're doing. I just have my way of doing things. Being an innovator is a different story. These are the guys who basically go through life, showing people that things are possible, going from the impossible to the possible. And the guy in the lower corner, right corner of your screen is my boss. His name is Byung-In Seo. He's a chemist, but by God, does he know dentistry? And he's had a lot of impact on the way I think, on the way I process information, and on the way I share information. So in my mind, he's an innovator, okay? And he has been part of the history of bonding, okay? We're talking about things that started out in 1985, when maybe some of you guys who are here were maybe not even born, if we have some young dentists, or maybe, we're just starting to think about going to dental school. We're talking about guys, Dr. Seo and so many others that are no longer alive. Dr. Seo is 90 some years old, who have written the story of bonding, and now we're taking over. All right. So it's quite interesting to be able to share with this, with Dr. Seo every day, because every day he has a different lesson, a different chemistry lesson. And this is the kind of thing that makes my job super interesting. He's written a book. It is called Principles of Adhesion Dentistry, and I'm writing another book. It's called Bonding for Dummies. Of course, my friends tell me that my book is not going to be successful because of the title, because people don't want to, I'm not a dummy. Okay, but think about, I think a lot of people have something for dummies, some kind of bonding for, some kind of book for dummies in their house. I am not going to call it Bonding for Dummies. It's going to be a clinical protocol book. I'm writing it right now. And regardless, what I'm trying to say is that if you read Dr. Seo's book, it's very intense regarding the chemistry and so on. I feel that it has to be brought down to the regular dentist, to the everyday dentist, to the dentist who's in the trenches, trying to make a living out of dentistry, practicing good, solid dentistry. So when it comes down to all this organic chemistry, is it really worth it? There are some people who believe that it is, but not a whole lot. So I think that what I'm trying to do is to make it more simple, make it kind of like a cookbook type of book, where you have your step-by-step and the reason why. And then, of course, if you apply it, you're going to get what you're supposed to get. So when you think about bonding is all about common sense. It's not that difficult. It took me a while to understand that bonding is not that complicated. A lot of people always want a protocol, a recipe, okay? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But they forget that there is a scientific essence behind every single step. And to me, if you're able to understand why you're doing each one of these steps, and then it becomes a very simple thing where all you got to do is plug and play products. And to be honest, I don't care what product you use, as long as you use it properly. I'm an Ivoclar guy. I like their cements. Great. Ivoclar is a great company. I'm a 3M guy. Great. That's even better. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Oh, I use Bisco. Wonderful. Thank you for your business. It doesn't matter. But what matters is that you understand why each procedure or each component of that protocol has to be done properly, and how you are going to accomplish the optimization of that procedure. If you understand that, bonding is fairly simple. So I broke it down into something that I like to call the bonding process. It's very, very, very simple. The bonding process has 2 components, and each component has to be applied to the substrate, regardless whether it's enamel, dentin, lithium disilicate, zirconia, titanium, it doesn't matter. The process is always the same. However, your substrate is going to determine your method, okay? And it's not that difficult. It's not that complicated. It's fairly simple. So let's go through that. So what is the process? The first thing you need to achieve is mechanical retention. I don't care how you do it, but you got to do it. Now, each substrate will have different ways of achieving mechanical retention. And I'll give you an example. On enamel, how do you achieve mechanical retention? You have to etch it with phosphoric acid, okay? Simple. Nowadays, we got some people that want to get fancy. Oh, I have a sandblaster. Great. You know, you're sandblasting with water. Awesome. But, you know, a syringe of phosphoric acid is fairly cheap. A sandblaster that works with water it's an investment, you know, anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000. But a syringe of phosphoric acid, what is it? I don't know, 20 bucks? It's nothing. Okay, so you apply enamel, and this was taught, proven by Buonocore in the 60s. Michael Buonocore, he showed that, and it still works. That's how you achieve mechanical retention on enamel. Now, when you go to zirconia, it's a different story because you can't etch zirconia. You can't. You cannot. You need to sandblast it in order to achieve mechanical retention. So you're changing your method based upon your substrate, okay? Now, if you think about lithium disilicate, oh, I can etch that, but not with phosphoric acid. You need hydrofluoric acid. Why? Because phosphoric acid is not going to cost a dent. It's not going to do anything. It's going to be nothing. You're going to waste your time and you're going to waste your etch. You need hydrofluoric acid. You know, whether it's 5%, whether it's 9.5 or 10%, and we will talk about that later on, but you need to etch it. So enamel, you have to etch with phosphoric. Lithium disilicate, you need to etch with hydrofluoric. And zirconia, you need to sandblast. You are going to achieve the same thing, which is mechanical retention. You need to achieve that. And that is the most, not important, but when you think about the bond strength that we are able to generate in a lab, your value, about 70%, it's all mechanical retention. However, mechanical retention is not as stable as your chemical interaction. Your chemical interaction is going to be more stable, okay? And it's going to provide bond, and it's going to last long, okay? How do you achieve that? By the application of either a primer on an indirect restoration or your dental adhesive. In our lab, we have terminology that we use. Every time we say primer, it relates to an indirect substrate. So something like silane or MDP containing primers and so on. When we say adhesive, we're referring to the tooth structure, whether it's enamel or dentin. Okay, this is our terminology, our slang that we use inside the lab. So when you say, you know, I'm talking to a chemist or he's talking about presenting a report or whatever, he says a primer. Okay, we know it's an indirect. That's it. However, they all do the same. They generate chemical interaction. That's it. Chemical interaction. Some people like to get caught up into the semantics. Listen, it's chemical interaction. So how do you generate chemical interaction on the enamel after it has been etched? You use a dental adhesive, whether it contains MDP, whether it contains another organic, functional monomer. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you need to use a dental adhesive on the enamel, and you are going to generate chemical interaction, and you're going to generate that mechanical interlocking. Now, when you go to lithium disilicate, can you use a dental adhesive there? No. It's not going to generate chemical interaction. Whatever bond strength you're going to get is going to be generated by the mechanical retention you did when you etched. So you need to use something that is going to react with the lithium disilicate surface, such as silane, okay? Silane will do the trick. And silane comes in many different forms. it comes as pure silane in a single bottle, a 2-bottle system, and then you have adhesives that contain silane, and then you have these primers that are multi-component, that they have MDP and silane. I particularly prefer to recommend the use of pure silane, and I will explain why as we get there, okay? But you need to use something that has silane, only lithium disilicate. When you go to zirconia, you need MDP for sure. It is so bizarre that today's what? October 28th, 2021. There are people out there that still think that you cannot bond to zirconia. That is just bizarre. Of course you can. Is it stable? 100%. As stable as lithium disilicate? Yes. Is the bond strength as good? 100%. You can do zirconia veneers today. And why is that? Because your bond is very good, predictable, and stable. You know, a veneer relies on bonding. There is no mechanical prep. Your preparation is minimal. So you don't need to do any kind of, macro mechanical retention when you do a preparation for a veneer nowadays. So you're capable of doing zirconia veneers. Why? Because of bonding. Veneers stay in place because of bonding. That's it. Simple as that. So, I only do feldspathic and lithium disilicate because the bonding is predictable. That's correct. But zirconia, 100% predictable also. You have a lot of people doing zirconia veneers. And we can talk about that later. And if you have any questions about that, definitely you can write it down. Okay. But the chemical interaction is generated via MDP. You need some kind of primer that has MDP. If you don't have MDP, you're not going to bond to zirconia. It's just not going to happen. Okay. So there are different primers out there in the market. And also zirconia is a funky surface. We'll talk about that later on when we go through every single substrate and the protocol. But zirconia is funky. It's temperamental, but it's just a fantastic substrate when it's treated properly. Okay. So when you think, and I'm going to talk about bonding to enamel and dentin. I think this is key. And, like, for example, I know Dr. Hornbrook, he makes a living out of doing cosmetic dentistry, and he probably does a lot of indirect restorations, and, God bless. But there are a lot of dentists that will do some indirect, but also will do a lot of directs. And this is where things get complicated, because if somebody doesn't understand enamel and dentin bonding for composite restorations, direct, things can get nasty really quick. Okay, really quick. The degradation of your bonding layer, actually, the National Institute of Health establishes that the average clinical performance of a composite restoration is 5.7 years in the United States. Now, we substituted amalgam with composites, and, amalgams were lasting, 20 years. And now the average time, this is documented. I'm not coming out with these numbers. This is documented. I have that data, 5.7 years. How do we make a composite restoration to last longer than average? Now, some of you are thinking, well, my composite restorations last 10 years. You're not average, and good for you. But the average in the US documented is 5.7 years for a composite restoration. So that we can definitely get better. We can definitely do better restorations with better clinical performance. It's just a matter of bonding and polymerization. So let's talk about the bonding component. When we think about enamel, you need to etch it with phosphoric acid. That's it. Now you have a sandblaster, good for you. You can sandblast your enamel and you can achieve great mechanical retention. A sandblaster with water is not something that everyone has. It's not something that is very popular. It is gaining some traction in today's world, but it's not something that is very common.
Hey, Rolando, can I interrupt you here?
Sure.
Because there are a lot of advocates of that. you know, they're saying, well, two components of that. One is the use of an erbium or chromium mag laser on the
Yes.
enamel before phosphoric.
Okay.
Second is the sandblasting. Of course, you know, they would say that you absolutely get a better bond strength. What are you seeing in the lab to enamel?
Yes, when you treat in combination with these devices, it does provide a better bond strength. Depending, you know, when you use a laser, you can increase up to 35 to 40%. And when you use a sandblaster, at least 20%. However, Dr. Hornbrook, I have to share information with the masses. Not everyone has a laser and not everyone has a sandblaster. And that is a fact.
Yeah,
Now,
no,
if you have a laser and you can include that in your bonding protocol, you're only going to do better, 100%. However, this is not what everybody does or what everybody has access to. Would I recommend the use of a laser? If you can,
yeah,
yes, if you can, I totally agree with that. But you know, it's good, it's better, but it's not something that everybody has, you know.
I think too, it's bonding to enamel with phosphoric. That's not the weak link in the chain, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely no, that's not
if
it.
you get a little better on the enamel, it's not really increasing your bonding efficiency.
When you read you know, systematic reviews, which are the articles, the information that has been published that has the most weight, systematic reviews and meta-analysis of clinical performance of veneers, you know, and you read that, they're etching enamel with phosphoric acid. They're not using, and they say, you know, veneers have 15 to 20 years. Okay. Oh, I'm going to use a laser. Okay, you can increase the bond strength, but that's not where it's going to fail.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's not where it's going to fail. So on your dentin, you can do two things. You can etch your dentin with phosphoric acid if you're a total etch person, which is 100% okay. I'm not against it. I just feel that it opens the door to mistakes. And a lot of those mistakes are can lead to detrimental effects. Or you can etch your dentin with an organophosphate, which is self-etch. Now, here's the deal. When self-etch came out, and we're talking about the year 99, 2000, there were some products that were very good, such as Clearfield SE Bond from Curare. It worked fine. And other companies jumped on board and tried to compete. Their self-etch products were not very good. You know, they were too hydrophilic. They were very acidic, too much water content. Adhesive layer was degraded by the presence of water in dentin. Bond strength was not very good. All these things were happening. And what happened was that it generated a really bad reputation for self-etch. However, it provided so much information for the industry to learn from and actually fix the problem, okay? And this is where development, the part of research and development comes into play. I have been involved in that. And yes, I know that your 7th generation single bottle systems were not optimal. They were not. They didn't work as well as your 4th or 5th generation adhesives. So even though you were moving forward in generation, your product was underperforming, okay? Now, why did these products come out? I will explain why. So total etch, here we go. A lot of people do that. It's okay, 100%. This is what is being taught in dental school. Every single dental school on the face of the planet. And believe me, I have traveled to a lot of countries and I have lectured in a lot of places. About 4 years ago, I lectured in Egypt and Morocco, and I was able to pinpoint, okay, I lectured in Africa. I have lectured in every continent on the planet. And the problems are the same. I don't care if you're in Norway or if you're in Utah, it doesn't matter. The problems are always the same, okay? The approach might be different, when the problem that people face are pretty much the same. So this is what is being taught, total etch. This is something that if you've been around for a while, you know that when this came out, this was seen as almost as heresy. Oh, you're going to etch dentin, you're going to kill the pulp and all these things, right? Now we know that it doesn't really matter. What are you doing here? You're removing the smear layer. But when you remove this smear layer, you're also exposing collagen and opening up. Then this is going to happen. It's unavoidable. The removal of the smear layer by phosphoric acid, whether it's 32, 35, or 37%, is going to happen within 5 to 7 seconds of etching. So when people are etching dentin for 30 seconds, that's an overkill. You can etch 15 seconds and you're going to be fine. And this is what's going to happen. You're going to expose collagen, open up the dentinal tubules, all right? And now you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to deal with that one way or another. So what does the technique tell you? You know, I remember the good old days when they told us you need to keep the dentin moist. Okay, what is moist? Well, you need to achieve the proper moisture. How to achieve that? Well, you know, if you're in the beach and then the wave comes into the sand and then it retreats and you can see how the sand is shiny. What if I never been to the beach? So all these things were very abstract, very subjective. Okay, so how do you achieve proper moisture? After you etch, you rinse. After you rinse, you use high vac. That's your proper moisture right there. You're going to see a shiny dentin. Your collagen is going to be hydrated and it's ready for you to place your adhesive, whatever adhesive you want to use. It doesn't matter. But now your adhesive is going to be able to penetrate through the collagen and seal the tubules. The problem when you open up the tubules is that, you know, there is this article. I always forget to use the reference. It's an article by Dr. Martin Brandstrom. Dr. Brandstrom, the article is called The Theory of Post-op Hypersensitivity, Hydrodynamic Theory of Post-op of Dentin Hypersensitivity. What does that mean? Inside every dentinal tubule, there is a odontoblastic prolongation. And whenever there's a change in pH, pressure, or temperature, and that change is a stimulus, hits the odontoblastic prolongation, that stimulus is going to travel through the prolongation all the way to the odontoblast, and the odontoblast is going to react. The patient is going to feel pain. That is post-op sensitivity. That's basically it. You're exposing the dentinal tubule. You're not sealing it properly. Now you're thinking, well, but I do apply the adhesive. Yeah, but your dentin is not conditioned to absorb the adhesive and for the adhesive to properly go through the collagen and seal the tubule. Okay, so this is what I want. I want my collagen to be 100% hydrated. I want my collagen to absorb that adhesive so the adhesive penetrates through the collagen and inside the dentinal tubule. Okay, that's what you want. You really want that to happen. What happens is that when you are rinsing your etchant and then you have too much water, your first impulse is to use a little bit of air. Okay, and when you use a little bit of air, this is an image of 3 seconds of air, how the collagen collapses. And now the collagen, instead of being like a sponge, your collagen is more like a wall. It's just this collapsed wall that will hinder the ability of the adhesive to go through the collagen, because now your collagen is collapsed, and also will hinder the ability of the adhesive to seal the dentinal tubules. And this is why I always tell people, listen, if you want to do total etch, make sure you keep your dentin moist. Make sure you keep your collagen hydrated, because if you don't, you might run into some post-op sensitivity. We get questions about post-op sensitivity every single day at work. I answer these questions, okay? And when I lecture, I ask people, raise your hand. How many of you have placed a posterior composite? Everybody raises their hand. Raise your hand, those of you who have experienced post-op sensitivity. Everybody raises their hand. So this is not something that is novel. It's not something that is gone. It's not happening anymore. It is happening, okay? So, you know, I'm asking you guys, and of course I cannot see you, but think about it. This is the main reason. So now, because you etch the dentin with phosphoric acid and you expose the dentin on tubal, now you need to make sure that you manage your dentin properly so your adhesive can penetrate through the collagen and then seal your dentinal tubal. If you are not capable of doing that, you are going to experience sensitivity related to bonding, which is different than the sensitivity that can be related to occlusion, other things. But when it comes to bonding, this is it. How do you know it's bonding? The patient bites and it hurts. As soon as he stops biting, it doesn't hurt anymore. And it's a sharp pain because there is a change in pressure. The stimulus is the pressure. So basically what's happening inside all these tubules is kind of like a suction thing, okay? How many tubules are there on dentin, on a millimeter square? Anywhere between 50 to 200,000, depending on the depth of the dentin. So, it's a lot of tubules. So you got to be really careful, all right? Really, really careful. When this was happening and the only technique was total etch, I was having these issues. I went to a lecture at the Chicago Midwinter by Professor Raymond Bertolotti. Dr. Bertolotti started talking about self-etch, how to get rid of sensitivity. And Dr. Bertolotti is one of these guys that I have a lot of respect for. He's out of San Francisco. He was a professor there and he had his continuing education program and so on. It was all about bonding. And he recommended self-etch. And I remember I bought Clearfield SE Bond, started using it. Self-etch, no phosphoric acid. Does it work? 100% of the time on dentin. But on enamel, it wasn't working. What did I start to see? Ditching and a lot of like staining on my enamel composite, area right there, my caval surface area. And the reason for that is because your self-etch adhesive is not capable of properly generating a good mechanical retention and a good bonding to enamel on its own. I don't care what product you use. You need to etch enamel with phosphoric acid. Dentin, not necessarily, but enamel 100% of the time. So if you want to go the total etch route, that's fine. If you want to go the self-etch route on dentin, I will highly recommend that you do this. Okay, it's called selective etch. Now you have the best of both worlds. You have good bond to enamel because you have etched it with phosphoric acid. And now you have I don't want to say protection of the dentin, but now you're going to avoid the possibility of post-op sensitivity by self-etching dentin. Again, it's a recommendation, okay? I know because I did this for many years for all of my composite restorations. And as soon as when I started doing this, I didn't experience sensitivity anymore, but my composite restorations were looking really crappy because they were ditching on the caval surface. When I started doing this, it was great. It worked for me, okay? It worked for me. And I don't recall ever etching any dentin on purpose because sure, if you look at here in a box, you're going to etch dentin. It's unavoidable because you can't control just placing a little bit of etching, but you're not etching the whole thing, okay? So even though you might etch dentin accidentally, you're not doing this. You're not doing this, which is definitely removing the whole full smear layer. So this is something to think about, okay? Now, if you tell me, hey, I've been doing total etch for 20 years, I don't have any problems. Good for you. You don't need to change. If it's not broken, don't change it. But maybe some of you may want to think about this, different strategy, different approach. Last time I etched dentin, it was probably my mother-in-law. I etched that dentin and then I dried it bone dry. She left the office. She left my office, kind of like sideways. And she said, I feel a little, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to feel. I love my mother-in-law. I love her. I love the fact that she lives far away, very far away. Moving forward. So this is something for you guys to think about, okay? There are different approaches nowadays. Social media has become an outlet where people like to go and get some information. And that is a good thing if you're following, like I follow Dr. Hornbrook, right? But I know that the information that he's going to provide is super solid, okay? But there are a lot of guys out there who take beautiful photography, but you don't know, like, how does this work? They don't explain it, but they like the, how do you call it? The following, when people follow and they give you like, and the endorphin generation, because, people like their work and so on, the admiration. And if you're doing that, you're not really teaching or sharing information. You're just looking for followers or for people to admire you. And I think that that's not a teacher. That is just a moron. Okay. So that's the way I think. And that's me. And that, okay, this is very personal. So there are two ways of doing things nowadays. You got the guys who will bond directly to the dentin and won't use anything to protect it. And there is another group of people that believe in placing things on top of the dentin to stimulate, whether it's remineralization, calcium ion exchange, something. You have so many companies using, developing products that will generate some kind of ion exchange, whether it's antimicrobial, remineralization, reorganization of dentin. It's a thought process. I believe in that. Other guys say, nope, I don't need to do any of that. I bond directly. That's great. Okay. So, there is a possibility out there. You got so many products, and you don't need to think about old school glass ionomer dye-cal kind of approach. You have so many products out there that are, providing a different type of service. You got products that are capable of inducing hydroxyapatite crystal precipitation, which can lead to, remineralization. 100%. It's been proven in the lab. All these products, new products, not the old school product. We're talking about new products, the MTAs, the MTA likes. We're talking about calcium silicate. We're not talking about necessarily dye-cal, which is, it's 100 years old. No, we're talking about the new stuff. And you have so many companies that have products that are doing this. This is something that is definitely worthwhile looking into, because I am convinced that if you're capable of having some kind of effect on your surface, on your bonding surface, which is your dentin, and then you bond to it, if you can alter that, you're going to have more of, I don't like to use the word bioactive, because I think that's just a buzzword. And every time I hear somebody saying bioactive, I feel like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I like to say biointeractive. When you have something that actually generates a change, a significant change in the engineering of that surface. And when you're able to do that, and then you bond to it, you can actually think about improving the clinical performance of that restoration, because at the end, my sole purpose in life is to make that restoration last longer than 5.7 years, which is what the National Institute of Health is telling me that it will last. Okay, so I do believe in these products. Check them out, you know, do some reading. If you have any questions, feel free to send them my way, and I will tell you what I feel and what I think about a lot of these products. I think TheraCal LC is a product that we make. It's great. Biodentin by Septodont. We don't make that product. Biodentin doesn't pay me. Septodont doesn't pay me to say it, but I will say it. It's a fantastic product. 100% fantastic. And there's so many out there, but I have tested these two products so many times in so many different ways, and they work. They generate hydroxyapatite. It precipitates into the dentin, and now the dentin may have the ability to reorganize itself and to actually generate a more, you know, a stronger surface. This is just my thought process. Again, if you don't believe in any of this, that's fine. If you don't care about remineralization, that's fine too. That's a different approach. Of course, there's always somebody, I haven't used a liner in 20 years. I don't have any problems. That's fine too. 100%, not a problem. But this is what I believe, and this is what I recommend. And I don't care if you buy TheraCal LC from Bisco or Biodentin from Septodont. But it's interesting that maybe you may want to read and do a little bit of research about this, because more and more companies are coming out with more interesting products. And there is a reason for that. It's because the industry understands that this is a good thing. And by putting products out there for people, people always tell me, oh, you just want me to buy your product. And I'm like, no, we develop products because we want to change and make dentistry better, whether you buy it or not. That's what I believe anyway. You know, I don't get paid on commission. And if I did, you know, I should be swimming in money. I'm not. I like what I do. I am passionate about it, and I want to make dentistry just a little better. And that's why I do what I do. All right, guys.
Rolando, can I interrupt you here?
100%.
So I'm a huge TheraCal fan, as I think you know. I only use it in deep dentin where I'm close to the pulp, right?
Right.
So, and I'm a total etcher. I mean, you're not going to change my mind. You know, I use Albon 3 from way back. But anyway, what bonds are, let's say someone says, you know what, I'm a liner guy, which I'm not. I'm not typically a liner guy, right? But there are people out there that are putting RMGIs, they're putting glass ionomers, TheraCal as a liner. What kind of bond values, 2 questions. What kind of bond values are you getting? Let's say I'm relying on a lot of surface area to dentin. I mean, you showed that one onlay, right? Or that direct composite that you're doing. You're relying on a large surface area of dentin.
Is that what you're saying?
No, the previous one that you showed where you did the select etch. Yeah, way back. Anyway, so you're relying on a lot of surface area of dentin to help with your retention form, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I look at that and I think, man, I mean, that's great dentin to bond to. I want to utilize that.
Yeah, well.
Right? So the question that I would have for the people that even TheraCal, I don't care whether TheraCal or Activa or Biodentin.
Whatever, yeah.
But if they line all that dentin, because that's what they believe in, and I'm cool with that, what kind of bond values are you getting? And let's use TheraCal because that's the product you're most familiar with. What kind of bond values are you getting from TheraCal to dentin, and then from your dental adhesive to TheraCal?
Okay, so let's start with what you said at the beginning. You said, I'm going to quote you. David Hornbrook, Dr. Hornbrook said, I use TheraCal in deep preps. That's where it's intended to be used. Now, the problem is that as you go deeper in dentin, your bond strength automatically goes down. The closer you are to the pulp, your bond strength goes down dramatically. So when we do bond strength tests to superficial dentin, which is the one that is closest to the enamel, that's where we get our 30s and our 40s. megapascals. But as we go deeper, it goes down to 20, 18. Why? Because what happens is that your dentinal tubule, the diameter is getting bigger. And okay, okay, let me see if I can find an image. Okay, here we go. Between dentinal tubule and dentinal tubule, there is a dentin called intertubular dentin. This is where you get your bond strength. People think that you get your bond strength because the adhesive goes inside the dentinal tubule. That's not necessarily true. What you need is for the adhesive to get into the intertubular dentin. As you go deep, your diameter, your dentinal tubule gets bigger, and there is a reduction in surface area for bonding, which is the intertubular dentin, the surface area gets smaller. That's why your bond strength goes down. Now, when you're down there, what you need to think is about protecting your pulp rather than bond strength, okay? Rather than bond strength. You still have the walls, and most important, you still have enamel. If you have enamel, your bond strength is not that important on that deep pulpal floor. You have walls and you have enamel. So yeah, when you look at this, this is fantastic. Oh, I'm going to cover it with glass ionomer. Yeah, your bond strength is not going to be good. So you're not, because you just covered that dentin with glass ionomer. Theracal, what is the bond strength? Very, very low. Very, very low. It's not intended to bond. It's intended to react. Okay? That's why I always tell people, put it in the deepest area. In the deepest area. Now, what is the bond strength of your adhesive to Theracal? Super good. Yeah. Why? Because it has resin. And because it has resin, your bond strength is in the 30s. So it's fine. The problem is your bond strength of Theracal to the dentin, but it's not intended to have any bond strength.
So let me ask you another question. So, there's adhesive and cohesive failure. I mean, you know that, and you might describe it much better than I would. If you put too thick a layer, and let's go to Theracal just because you're most familiar with it, if you saw a bond failure, you're going to see cohesive failure within the Theracal?
Yeah, because, specifically talking about Theracal, that guy is super opaque. It's super opaque. So when you use Theracal in a thick layer, your light is not going to be able to cure the most deep part of that layer, because it's not going to go through. And this is because of the calcium that is part of the formula. So yeah, you're going to have cohesive failure and you're going to have problems. Actually, you might even see a flaking off of the Theracal because it didn't cure. And if it doesn't cure, is the way Theracal stays in place, I don't want to say bonding, stays in place, is because you need to leave the dentin moist. And this is very product specific, okay? This is specific to Theracal. You need to leave the dentin moist. And what's going to happen is that when when you apply it with your syringe and you have that dentin, that moisture, Theracal is going to be able to flow and have intimate contact. Like if you take two glass slides and you add a drop of water and you put them together, it's very difficult to split them apart because of that connection, that intimate contact. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve here. But if you put the thick of a layer, when you cure it, it's going to flake away. Why? Because it didn't cure in the bottom. So yes, if it's too thick of a layer of any of these liners, you're going to have cohesive failure. That's why you need to be really careful. If you're going to be a lining guy, lining has to be always less than 1 millimeter, whatever material you're going to use. Okay. A liner, it is defined as something you put on a dentin that is less than 1 millimeter. If it's more than 1 millimeter, and then it's not a liner anymore, it's a base. Yeah. And that's a different story. Now you need compressive strength, you need more of different physical properties. So you need to be aware of that. And also, anywhere you put this liner, your bond strength is out.
Yeah,
is out. You can't think about bond strength and lining. You can't. They don't come together. You have the walls, you have the enamel, but deep down there, your bond strength is gone because you cover the bonded surface, which is dentin, with something, whatever it is.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. And I'm glad you brought up the leaving the dentin moist, because, you know, us as dentists, we never read instructions, right? So someone's going to go out. Yeah, we don't. And, you know, for one thing, you write it in like 25 languages, and I can't find the English version.
Baby, Dr. Hornbrook.
Yeah, that's true. But
okay,
anyway.
so Dr. Hornbrook, I buy stuff from IKEA, and it has cartoons. It's the perfect instruction. We men don't read instructions, and a lot of women don't read instructions either. So,
and then you throw a dentist in the loop. We don't need. So I think it's really, my point with that is, I think it's really important that you brought up the fact that you need to leave the dentin slightly moist, because I'll tell you, when I first got this, and I got it when you as a beta tester, right?
Yes, you were.
And I air dried it thinking that's what you do, right? And then you put it on and it just flakes right off as you rinse it. So I think I'm glad you brought that up. So there's another question I'm going to ask because someone asked it and I think it's important. So let's look at this picture. Again, I'm a huge, I would still call it bioactive, a product that has some interaction with dentin, true interaction, right?
Yes.
Whether it be Activa, Biodentin, or Theracal. You know, what they used to use, and people are still using it, as an RMGI, like Vitrobond liner or Fuji, like that, right? So let's look at this. And I went you, again, I know you work for Bisco, but you're very open and very honest. What would be the advantage or disadvantage if you're looking at this picture and this is Vitrobond liner, or this is Theracal or Biodentin? Throw me the pros and cons.
Dr. Hornbrook, you're putting me in a really tough spot.
I know.
Okay, that's fine. That's okay. So, okay. Glass ionomers release fluoride. When you look at glass ionomers in the conventional glass ionomer, the powder liquid, the amount of fluoride release is super high, okay? Super high. But when you look at resin modified glass ionomer, the amount of fluoride release goes down, okay? Because the trade-off is I have convenience of placement, but my fluoride release is going to go down.
Right.
Remember, conventional glass ionomers require that you place it and then you protect it. You got to wait 72 hours. Who wants to do that, right? So now you got your Vitrobond and your Vitromer and all that fun stuff, or your Fuji and whatever. Does fluoride works on dentin as well as on enamel? No, it does not. It does not. This is what we have found. I have tested to see if there is, what is the interaction between dentin and fluoride from a resin modified glass ionomer? Not a whole lot, okay? Not a whole lot. There is bonding through something called chelation. And of course, when you have bonding, you have a seal. And when you have a seal, you are going to pretty much have an effect on any bacterial growth, because you made the, you have sealed that floor. However, when you have calcium, whatever source, it doesn't matter the brand, calcium makes the environment alkaline. And alkaline is an interesting thing because alkaline does inhibit bacterial growth. Alkaline does have an effect on hydroxyapatite precipitation. And alkaline does have an effect on healing, which glass ionomer doesn't, okay? The pulp likes alkaline. So which one do I want to choose? Okay, the one that has the healing, the apatite precipitation, crystal precipitation. I don't want to say Theracal is antimicrobial because I'm not allowed to say that, nor biodentin, okay? But I do want to say that they do generate an alkaline pH in the environment and at the interface, which resin modified glass ionomers do not. So right now, the way we're seeing things, I think that anything that generates an alkaline pH from whatever brand, it's something that is going to be more useful than a resin modified glass ionomer, which at most it's going to be neutral pH, but never alkaline. Never alkaline.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You did a great job explaining that. So.
All right. So can I keep going?
Absolutely.
100%. So, hold on. When you look at all these things that we've talked about regarding not only the use of, you know, a bioactive or biointeractive liner or whatever, and the use of selective etch, what kind of adhesive? Let's say right now you say, hey, I think that this is interesting. I may want to be using, you know, my selective etch technique. Okay, what kind of adhesive should you use here? A universal bonding agent. Why? Because a universal bonding agent will bond to etched enamel. It will bond to unetched dentin. But also, in case you did etch the dentin, you are going to be able to bond to it. That's why it's universal, because one of the reasons it's universal, because a universal bonding agent by nature should be capable of bonding in total etch, self-etch, or selective etch technique, 100%. So if you're doing selective etch, you're going to be able to bond. If you go in self-etch, you're going to be able to bond. If you're doing total etch, you're going to be able to bond, okay? And that's why I think Dr. Hornbrook said, you're not going to change my mind. I use all bond 3, which is fine. I'm not in the business of changing people's mind, but I am in the business of showing people how to do things in different, you know, providing different options. I did fight at Bisco to go to your Utah Valley seminar. I did wanted to go to see you, you know, in action, but of course I'm just a grunt, so they didn't let me go, which is fine. But you know, I'm not in the business of changing people's technique. And then of course, like, you know, Dr. McLaren, Ed McLaren comes to Bisco every year. And he asked me to always update him. And I do the update. And I give him all the information. And he keeps telling me, you're not going to change my mind. I'm going to be doing total etch. Dr. Pascal Magnier, same thing. I'm going to be doing total etch. And then I always ask, and then why do you want me to update you guys? Oh, we just want to know what's going on. We're not going to change our mind. And I'm like, oh, this is like talking to old people. You know, you talk to them, but they don't want to change their mind. That's fine. Fair enough. However, I do believe that there's a large group of dentists that are experiencing post-op sensitivity, and this is a way to avoid it. That's it. Whether you want to use a liner or not, that's fine. And you can use whatever you think it's interesting for you, you know, but doing selective etch will definitely give you an advantage. This is what I used for many, many years. And to tell you the truth, you know, I have 2 kids. One child, well, he's not a child. He's 19 years old. He's in college. I love him to death. But I have a 13-year-old who's autistic. And that little guy, whoever has a child with special needs understands what I'm saying. You know, that little guy makes you wonder about, you know, the uncertainty of the future when you're not there anymore to provide. And if my child sat on my chair today, my autistic child, this is what I would do. Actually, to be honest, this is what I would do. Actually, here we go. Okay, this is what I would do to my autistic child. And if that is enough for my autistic child, who I love the most, more than anybody in the world, is enough for the rest of the galaxy. Okay, so this is what I recommend. So I'm done with direct. I'm going with indirect now. I don't want to take any more time. Let's go ceramic bonding. There are two surfaces that you need.
Can I interrupt you again? I apologize.
100%.
I know your train of
Yeah.
thought. Are you done with dentin bonding?
I am.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you one question.
Yeah.
IDS, immediate dentin sealing. You know,
Immediate dentin sealing.
we never did it, and then it kind of
2009.
became kind of a popular lecture topic, and now no one does it anymore. But there's still this.
Well, Dr. Meunier has been able to bring it back into the social media world. Now you see a lot of people doing it. And okay, so is it worth it? From a lab perspective, yes, because we have seen that freshly cut dentin provides the best bond. First of all, when you take a tooth in the lab and you expose the dentin and you bond to that dentin, your bond strength is going to be better than the dentin that has been exposed for a week. 100%. The whole idea of bonding today, taking the impression today, and that, you know, and then you place a provisional, and even if the provisional falls, the patient has the dentin that has been sealed with no sensitivity. It makes sense. And I have done it, and it has worked for me. I did it on my wife, and I was away on a trip, and the provisional fell off, and she said, provisional fell off, but I don't have any sensitivity. I'm like, great, that's wonderful news. Okay, there is the whole thing about the stress relief based upon I polymerize the adhesive now without the constraint of the cement. And that also is interesting because with the polymerization shrinkage of the cement, it will have an effect on your bond strength. Is this something that everybody's willing to do? I don't think so. However, would I recommend it? I would say you want to think about it. Now, the problem is that if you read the original article from Dr. Meunier, he states that, first of all, you need to use OptiBond FL. You know, he's specifically focused on a product. I think you can do IDS with any adhesive. Doesn't need to be a, you know, OptiBond FL. You use Allbond 3, you can do a, IDS with Allbond 3. You can do IDS with Allbond Universal or any universal adhesive as long as you know what you're doing, okay? The main thing about IDS is that you do your prep, you bond to your prep, and then you take the impression after that, allowing the bond to mature over time, and then you place your provisional. Is that something that actually has an effect on bond strength? 100%. 100%. Is that something that should be done in every restoration? If you don't have the access to get the restoration quick, you know, for cementation procedures, yes, I believe so. I listened to Dr. Meunier when he presented this in like 2007, I think, and I started doing IDS, and that's all I did for every indirect restoration that I did, whether it was a crown, an onlay, crown or onlay. I didn't do it for veneers, but I did it for crowns and for onlays, because I have seen in the lab how when you bond now and you test it in a week, is different that when you bond with a dentin exposed for a week, and then you bond, your bond strength goes down dramatically and significantly. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think the IDS protocol is something that we have to look at.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Do you do IDS?
I do not. I do not, because I'm one of those old guys, right? That I look
No,
at.
you're
stuff-
not. You just have a different way of
Yeah,
approaching.
I look at stuff that I placed 30 years ago that is almost all dentin.
We're
right?
good. We're good. We're good.
And the second, the second as an educator, and you encounter this, is, I mean, dentists aren't really good isolators. I mean, I apologize for all the dentists I'm talking to, but
You're
one
100%
of them.
correct. Yes.
And now you're asking them to isolate twice. One with the IDS,
Twice. Yes.
and then the second time when they have to re-etch
Well,
everything.
and Pascal recommends the use of a sandblaster. So it makes it even more complex. So I understand what you're saying, 100%. Look, IDS is an interesting concept. Dr. Hornbrook, what I'm going to say, how many people, we have 170 participants. So hopefully, what is the term that our R&D guys use? I can't remember, kind of like off the record. They say
Okay.
off the record. A lot of people like to be different.
Yeah.
And being different doesn't necessarily mean that you're better. It just means that you're different.
Yeah.
And different draws attention. However, I think that being solid brings more attention.
I call it good lecture topics. There's a lot of people out there that come up with a catchy name or a catchy little thing.
Yes, catchy name
on social media. And then it kind of fades away with time.
100%. So, like I said, you're solid.
Well, thank you.
No, my pleasure. All right. So, ceramics bonding, 2 substrates. Okay, actually 3. But when you think about ceramics, we're thinking about products that are somewhat aesthetic. They look great, but unfortunately, they cannot be classified into one group because they have different physical properties, different performance, and different bonding protocols. Okay, so I have done this based upon the different ways to approach lecturing about ceramics. I have etchable ceramics and I have non-etchable ceramics. And when I say etchable, I talk about generating mechanical retention with hydrofluoric acid. So what is an etchable ceramic? In my world, is porcelain or feldspathic porcelain, lithium disilicate or lithium silicates, and of course, hybrid ceramics. Non-etchable ceramics is zirconia. I don't even want to talk about alumina because if you're doing alumina, it's time to change. Listen to me. It's time to change. If you're doing alumina, you have a flip phone and some kind of like one of these things where they send you messages like on your belt. No, it's time to change. Forget about alumina. It doesn't matter. It's zirconia. So you got 3Y, 4Y, 5Y. I have tested all of these. The protocol is pretty much the same. There is no difference regarding the protocol to different types of zirconia. The difference is going to be on this cosmetic effect. The effect that you're going to be able to achieve by using a 3Y, 4Y, and 5Y. Okay, and I will talk about that later. So, method. Etchable ceramics. You need to hydrofluoric acid etch it, and you need to apply a silane. Now, here's where it gets tricky. I know that we dentists love to have everything in like, we love to, I don't want to say optimize. I want to say have our armamentarium be as small as possible. We don't want to carry so many things. I get that. I get it. Okay. And this is where the Monobond Plus, the Ceramic Primer Plus, or even the Scotch Bond Universal Plus seem like a great idea, because they basically is one drop will work on everything. It will, but it will not necessarily be optimized. Remember, at the beginning of my lecture, I said optimization. Will these things work? Yes, 100%. They will work, but it depends on what is it you want to achieve. So when I say etchable ceramics, hydrofluoric acid etch, and silane, I'm talking about where you need bonding. Pure silane, 3M has pure silane, Bisco has pure silane, Ivoclar has pure silane, Kerr has pure silane, Dentistry has pure silane. I just named 5 companies that are probably the companies that own the market. They all have pure silane. And some of them have, you know, these concoctions where they combine different things to make your life easier. Also, remember, when you do things, when you buy things or you purchase things that are, how do I say it? They are all combined. Yes, it's convenient, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's optimized. So I have found that pure silane, regardless of the brand, whether it's 3M, Kerr, Dentistry, or Ivoclar, or Bisco, works better from a bond strength perspective than when you have these concoctions that include silane. Why is that? Because silane is very temperamental. Silane doesn't like to be in low pH environments. And that's what happens when you mix it with MDP. Okay? It becomes inactive over time. Okay? The bond strength is not as good. The literature has shown this. This is not me talking. This is the literature. Okay? So it is always better to use pure silane. So think about a veneer. A veneer where you need the most bond you can get in order for that veneer to stay in place. So, oh, I use Monobond on a crown. Okay. I use Monobond or Ceramic Primer Plus on an onlay. Okay. I'm going to do a veneer. Use pure silane. Curare has pure silane. Okay. Now, on non-etchable ceramics, which is basically zirconia, you're going to have to sandblast, and you're going to have to use an MDP containing primer. Why MDP? Because MDP has an affinity, a chemical affinity to zirconia. No other organophosphate or adhesion promoting monomer has that affinity. You're going to achieve bond by using MDP. You're not going to achieve it by using something else. Once you sandblast it, you have achieved mechanical retention. Whatever you put on top of that is going to bond, sure, but it's mechanical. It's not chemical. MDP will bond to zirconia, 100%. It has been proven. It has been published, okay? Now, porcelain, feldspathic. Do a lot of people use feldspathic? You have a group of people that do feldspathic porcelain, specifically veneers. You know, feldspathic porcelain, when it comes down to etching, your hydrofluoric acid concentration will have an effect on the etching time. So I'm going to tell you guys, there are 2 types of hydrofluoric acid. You have your hydrofluoric acid. I don't like to call it low concentration, but I'm going to say it is between 4 and 5%. And then you have hydrofluoric acid that is between 9 to 10%. So you have those 2 types of hydrofluoric acid. If you're going to etch your feldspathic porcelain with and hydrofluoric acid anywhere between 4 and 5%, you're going to have to etch it for 4 minutes. You're going to have to etch it for 4 minutes. Now, if you have a hydrofluoric acid that is, its concentration is between 9 to 10%, you can etch it for 1 minute. So the concentration of your hydrofluoric acid will have an effect on your etching time on feldspathic porcelain, okay? On lithium disilicate, it doesn't matter. You're going to etch for 20 seconds. According to Ivoclar, who are the manufacturers of Emax, and I have to respect that. So when they tell me you etch our material 20 seconds, that's what I'm going to do. So if you, however, Ivoclar, they're etching, I think it's 5%. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's in the low end.
It's 5%.
5%. So they say you need to use our etch. If you don't use, if you use something higher, it's going to screw up the surface. That's a lie. You can use 9 or 10% hydrofluoric acid on lithium disilicate for 20 seconds. You're not going to alter the surface. You're not going to have any effect on the physical properties of your restoration, and you're going to achieve the same bond. I did it. I did it many, many, many times. So your bond strength, regardless of the concentration, as long as you etch for 20 seconds, is going to be the same. Okay? Don't call Ivoclar. They're going to sell you their etchant, which is fine. That's part of the game. I'm telling you, if you buy ultra dense hydrofluoric acid etch, which is at the high end, and by high end, I mean high concentration in the 9.5%, it's going to be fine. You're not going to have a problem. 20 seconds. As long as you etch for 20 seconds, you're going to be super fine. So, you know, you have different etch. You have the one, so many etches out there. You can etch for 20 seconds. Lithium disilicate. If you're going to etch feldspathic, different story. You have the low end etch or low concentration, and you have the higher concentration. And this is where time is going to be an issue. Low concentration on feldspathic, it requires between 3 to 4 minutes. If you do high concentration, 1 minute, and you'll be fine. Now your silane, you have 2-part, 1-part, single component, pure silane. That's what you need to get. Why? Because pure silane is hydrolyzed by the industry, by us, and then we provide it to you. Pure silane is stable in a single bottle. As soon, or you can have 2 bottles where you do your hydrolyzation in situ. A lot of people ask me, why should I have a 2-part silane? Well, if you're David Hornbrook, it's not a problem if you have a single bottle component, because you're going to be using it so fast, you're going to run out before it expires. However, if you're not doing that many restorations, having a 2-part silane can actually work for you, because every time you mix it, it's fresh. It's fresh. So you don't have to worry about degradation of a single bottle silane. They both have a, you know, an expiration, but the 1-part silane is usually 18 months. The 2-part silane goes up to 2 years. But think about this. How many of you guys have bought a bottle of silane and it expires in your office and you're not done with it? It's because you're not doing that many restorations, which is fine. So having a 2-part silane, that's where it becomes interesting. If you're doing a veneer, you need silane. If you're doing a crown and you decide to use a concoction like Monobond Plus or Ceramic Primer Plus, that's fine, because you have retention from your prep. A veneer doesn't have any retention. This is where you need to optimize your bond, okay? This is, a lot of people tell me that, oh, Rolando, now I have an adhesive that has silane. And I tell them, brother, the silane in the adhesive is not going to work. The literature shows it, but this is what I'm using, they tell me. So I try to find a way to show that a silane in an adhesive is not going to work. It's deactivated due to the low pH, and I'm not going to get into that, but it just doesn't work. So let me give you a little background. When you take your lithium disilicate restoration or feldspathic and you etch it, the surface becomes very hydrophilic. And if you have silanized any of these surfaces after etching, you can see that when you place the silane, it just moves, it spreads out. Why? Because your surface is hydrophilic after etching. But once you apply your silane and your silane reacts with the surface, your surface becomes hydrophobic. Okay, because now your surface has been reacted with the silane. That's a chemical reaction, and you get a hydrophobic surface. So I want to show you a video. This is a surface that I have etched lithium disilicate, and I'm going to place pure silane, right? And here is this is a Emax ingot, and I'm placing silane on that ingot. And now I'm going to measure contact angle. I take water, I mix it with methylene blue so you can see it. And the surface should be hydrophobic. Boom, hydrophobic. Why? Because silane has reacted with the surface. This is normal. Now I'm going to take an adhesive that contains silane. In this case, Scotch Bond Universal. I have nothing against 3M, but they do sell an adhesive that contains silane, and they tell you this is going to substitute your silane. So I'm applying Scotch Bond Universal to my etched lithium disilicate ingot, okay? If this silane substitute my regular silane, and then I should have a hydrophobic surface. However, what I'm seeing is a hydrophilic surface, meaning that the silane in that adhesive did not react with the surface. Okay, this is a visual. And a lot of people get, especially the people that use this product as a silane substitute, they tell me, well, you should have liked it, whatever. Bro, it doesn't react. There is proof right there. I am not trying to be biased, because if this thing actually worked, and then I will definitely embrace it and tell Bisco, hey, this works. We need to come up with something similar or better than. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. Okay. So I only have like 10 more minutes, and let's talk about this guy. This is, I remember when Bruxer came out, it was those really dull, ugly, opaque crowns. Nobody wanted to do those, but hey, they became super popular. And I started doing a lot of zirconia bonding in the lab, and we couldn't figure out how to bond to it. And the reason we couldn't figure out how to bond to it because MDP is a functional monomer that was protected by patent. Curare had the patent. But one thing we saw was that whenever we use a Curare product on zirconia, it actually bonded. We can achieve good bond strength. So we actually had to wait for the patent to expire to be able to get MDP and test it. We're not going to get into the story of that, okay? But I will tell you this. Zirconia is a ceramic. You cannot etch it. Silane will not work on it. And your chemical bond is achievable based upon your metallic ions in the zirconia. Now, a lot of people say that zirconia is a metal. Zirconium as an element, number 40 in the periodic table, is a metal. But what we use in dentistry is zirconium oxide. It is a ceramic, okay? Now, here is a caveat. Saliva will not react with anything, with dentin, enamel, lithium disilicate, titanium, nothing. it will react with the zirconia, 100%. And when it reacts with zirconia, it will deplete the bonding sites. So now, once the zirconia surface has reacted with the saliva, you cannot bond to it. So this is something to consider, okay? So what are the protocols? Here's my first one. If your lab sandblasts the zirconia for you, you try it in as soon as you get it. Well, as soon as the patient sits, you try it in. As soon as you try it in, it becomes 100% contaminated by the saliva. You're done. You cannot bond. Now you need to decontaminate that zirconia. And there are ways to do that, and I will show you. Okay. Once you decontaminate, and then you rinse it, you prime it with an MDP containing primer, and then you do your cementation procedure, whatever that is. It doesn't matter, whatever that is. But you need to clean that zirconia crown. Now, let's say you do have a sandblaster. Let's say. So you try it in, and then you sandblast. Do you need to decontaminate? Not necessarily. I do recommend it in order to finish off the cleaning. You rinse it, you prime it, and then you cement it, okay? Now, these are the rules that we use in our lab. And these are the, how do you call it? What we recommend for people who have a sandblaster. Aluminum oxide, 50 microns. Your pressure should be 40 PSI or 2.8 bars. Now, when it comes to time, angle, and distance, those are negotiable. Why? Because when we bond to zirconia, we bond to a specific area in our lab, but you are bonding to a crown that is very, very customized, you know, to the prep you have. So you can't really say that you're going to need 20 seconds to sandblast. Maybe you need more, maybe you need less. What you need to see is that the surface is 100% matte, opaque, okay? Your angle, always place your nozzle of your sandblaster not perpendicular to the surface, but with an angle. Whether it's 40, 45, 55, or 60, it doesn't matter. We can control the 60 degrees. We have a device that does that in the lab. You don't need to. And you do have to, you know, keep some distance between your restoration and the tip of the nozzle of your sandblaster. All right. Primers. And then we're going to talk about cleaners. Your primer must contain MDP, 100%. 100%. MDP will bond to zirconia chemically as long as it is not contaminated. Okay. These are your primers. These are the primers that I have tested. There are many out there, but these are the guys that I know that work. Again, I worked for Bisco. I can put a slide here that only says Z prime. That's not my intention. My intention is to give you options. Z prime from Bisco, Monobond Plus from Ivoclar, and Clearfield Ceramic Primer Plus from Curare. Those will work. Okay. Now, when it comes to cleaners, actually you have three. I keep on telling myself that I have to update these slides. You got Zirclean and you have Ivoclean. Now, I was talking to Dr. Hornbrook prior to the presentation. I'm talking about how these materials work. What they do is that they're super alkaline. Okay, they're very alkaline. And what they will do is that once you have tried in your crown or restoration, whatever it is, and it has been contaminated with saliva, the phosphate lipids in saliva will bond to the bonding sites of zirconia. And you cannot remove that with water. You cannot remove that with ultrasonic. You need to use an alkaline solution. These two are very alkaline. You apply it, you let it work 20 seconds, 30 seconds, depending on the instructions, and then you rinse it. Now you remove the saliva contaminated layer and you have exposed your bonding sites to where you had them before you try it. And then you can apply your primer. Now your primer has the MDP somewhere to bond. If you don't do this, you're not going to bond. So one of the things we found out, which was super interesting, we had done all this testing in the lab, and then we started getting phone calls at Bisco saying, hey, things are falling off. I'm like, what do you mean falling off? Well, we're doing the protocol, why? It doesn't make any sense. Saliva. No one in the right state of mind in a lab is going to use saliva as a variable, because we know that saliva doesn't react with lithium disilicate or composite or enamel or dentin or metal. It doesn't, but it does react with zirconia. We learned that. Now we know that. And that's why Ivoclar and Bisco and Curare, the same guys that make the zirconia primers, which are the three companies that are actually understanding that zirconia requires a different bonding procedure, have generated not only primers, but also cleaners. The cleaner from Curare is called Katana Clean. I don't have an image of it, but it does exist and it does work very, very well. All right. So if you're going to bond a crown, let's say, you can use your primer, but you can also use an MDP containing cement, a crown or an onlay. Okay. In this case, you will not need to use the primer because the MDP is part of your cement. And due to the reaction of the MDP, you can actually make it work. So this type of cements will definitely bond to zirconia without the need of an extra primer. Okay. So those are options. On a veneer, different story. You're going to use a Licure cement, doesn't have MDP, so you need to use your primer, 100%. And if you're going to cement a crown, but you don't have one of these guys, you need to use your MDP containing primer in order to bond to zirconia.
So
Now,
Rolando, is there enough NDP in Theracem? So I use Theracem on my zirconia that are retentive, but I still use Z Prime Plus. You know, I'll clean it with Zir Cleaner. I have cleans because I'm always concerned, like you talked about, if something does a bunch of stuff, does it really do anything really well? Right?
Well, okay. So my testing are done on a flat surface.
Right.
Okay. So do I see a difference if I apply Z Prime and Theracem, or if I apply Theracem on its own, or even Panavia?
Right.
No.
Okay. That's good to know.
Okay. So I'm telling you, even Panavia, again, Curare doesn't pay me, but I have to be honest. Do I see a difference? No, I do not. Now, if I apply Z Prime, is that going to make a difference? No, but it doesn't hinder. To me, it is more important that you do not hinder. Why? Because if you use more Z Prime, you're going to need more Z Prime, and then I'm going to be able to get paid because you're going to pay for the Z Prime, Dr. Hornbrook. Right. Or I don't know if you get it for free or whatever, but the more product is being used, the more possibilities for me to get paid. Yeah. But
that's a good thing.
You don't have to. I haven't seen any difference between. That's why I have.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because again, I do use Z Prime when I use Theracem. Yeah, okay, that's good. So the other thing, really quickly, because I know that it's in the data that Beyond we had talked about, because there's going to be people that say I just cojet it and I'm fine, and I know that he found long-term bonds with the cojet actually because of the hydrophilicity, they decrease with time.
Yeah, we actually were able to remove the silent layer, the silent coated layer with water.
Right.
So if you rinse it away, it's not there anymore. So again, it's a great idea for metal, but not for zirconia. Okay. So we don't, cojet is very expensive. So again, we do not see the benefit of cojetting a surface. Yeah. We see the benefit of treating enamel with laser, and we see the benefit of sandblasting the enamel with aluminum oxide, 100%. And we don't make aluminum oxide and we don't manufacture lasers, but that benefit is there. And we have to acknowledge that. We don't see any benefit on using cojet. We don't. There is information out there that does, but we haven't seen it. So.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, Dr. Hornbrook, I'm done here. I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity that you just gave me. It was a pleasure. I have 10 minutes for Q&A, and you just let me know what we need to do.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, you got a great style, really great style. It's enjoyable. It's easy to understand. I appreciate it. And I apologize for my interruptions.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good.
You know, I'm like that annoying doctor in the front row that interrupts you with the hand raised, you know, right?
You know, this guy, this is probably how I attended your lectures. And you never remembered me. So I was close to 400 pounds. And then I met this young lady. This is my wife. And this is the one that told me, hey, I love you. I don't care if you're big, but you're going to die soon. So I started working out and doing something about it. And, you know, I started running and doing things that are definitely different. And I was able, I've been blessed to be able to go around the world and run marathons and so on and so forth. And it's just been a great, it's a great story, you know.
That is a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. And I just wanted to say that I'm not special. I'm not unique, but I am wired a little bit differently. But, you know, it's not worth it to you know, to be a slave of let's say, how do I say this so it doesn't sound so insensitive? It's not worth it to be a slave of bad health.
That's a good way to say it.
So, you know, take it as you want. I am right now really happy with not only the way I feel, but also I'm really happy to the way I see myself. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, you should be proud. I'm proud of you, and I appreciate. I'm glad you're still alive. That's a
yes.
Good,
so is my wife, because I you know, during this picture, I got into a big mortgage. So her thing was like, "Are you going to leave me with this mortgage?"
All right. A couple quick questions before we can, Steve. We can go ahead and put up the code. And so, Rolando, is the best way for them to get a hold of you if they had a specific question is, do you have an email address?
Okay, so okay, what I'm going to do is right here, and I don't know if you're looking at this as I'm doing this.
I am.
Okay, so hold on. Oh my God, what happened here? Okay, here we go. All right. So my email is rnunez@visco.com. So they can contact me there. Okay, you know, great. They can send me an email over there. My social media on Instagram is mostly in Spanish, and I understand that English speaking people, they go like, I don't want to follow this. And I get it, it's fine. I cater to a different community, but my email is right there. So if they have any questions, they want to, you know, they want to reach out, I'll be more than happy to answer any question via email. Not a problem.